Jake Martinez checked his rifle one more time. The warning lights on Kepler Station flashed red all around him. His squad moved fast through the metal halls. People were screaming and running everywhere. "Move! Move! Move!" Sergeant Jake shouted to his men. They had to get the civilians out before the enemy ships broke through the station's shields. Jake was 28 years old and had been fighting the aliens for 3 years. The Zephyrians looked like tall humans, but with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. They had started this war by attacking human colonies. At least, that's what everyone said. The station shook hard. More enemy fire hit the outer walls. Jake could hear the metal groaning under the attack. Dust fell from the ceiling as they ran toward the main hub where the escape ships waited. "Sir, the shields are at 20%, Private Collins said, running beside Jake. His young face was covered in sweat and fear. "I know," Jake replied. "We just need to hold them off a little longer." They reached the main hub. It was a huge round room with a glass dome showing the stars outside. But now those stars were filled with enemy ships, shooting bright blue beams at the station. Human families huddled together, waiting to board the escape ships. Jake's team helped load people onto the transports. Children cried while their parents held them tight. Old people moved slowly, and Jake's men had to help them walk. "That's the last ship," said Lieutenant Brown, Jake's second in command. "Everyone's loaded." Jake looked around the empty hub. His job was done. Time to get out of here. But then he heard something. A small cry, almost like a kitten. He turned toward the sound. Near the far wall, behind some broken equipment, he saw movement. Jake walked closer, keeping his rifle ready. What he found made him freeze. It was a child, but not a human child. This was a Zephyrian kid, maybe 6 years old in human years. The child had the same blue-gray skin as the adult aliens, but its face was round and soft like any young child. It wore a simple white outfit that was now torn and dirty. The alien child looked up at Jake with huge black eyes full of tears. It was trapped under a piece of metal that had fallen from the ceiling. The metal was too heavy for the small creature to move. Jake's finger moved to his rifle's trigger. This was the enemy. This was one of them. The same species that had killed his friends, destroyed human worlds, and started this whole war. But the child just looked at him and made soft crying sounds. It was hurt and scared and alone. Jake heard his radio crackle. "All teams, get out now! The shields are failing!" He looked up at the glass dome. Through it, he could see the enemy ships getting closer. Their weapons were charging for another attack. In seconds, this whole section would be destroyed. Jake looked back at the alien child. It had stopped crying and was just staring at him, waiting to see what the human soldier would do. Without thinking, Jake dropped his rifle and ran to the child. He grabbed the metal piece and lifted it off the small alien. The child was free, but now Jake could see more debris falling from the ceiling above them. A huge piece of the station's support beam was coming down right toward them. It was massive, easily big enough to crush them both. Jake had maybe 2 seconds. He didn't think. He just moved. Jake threw himself over the alien child, covering its small body with his own. His armor was strong, but not strong enough for what was coming. The metal beam crashed down on Jake's back with a sound like thunder. Pain shot through his whole body. He felt his ribs crack. His armor system started beeping warnings in his ear. Something warm and wet ran down his face. But under him, the alien child was safe. The beam had hit Jake instead. The child looked up at him with those big black eyes. Its small hand touched Jake's face, and it made soft sounds that might have bin words in its own language. Jake tried to stay awake, but everything was getting dark. His radio was still working, and through it, he could hear something strange. The enemy ships had stopped firing. On the command deck of the lead Zephyrian ship, Commander Lyra Vex stared at her tactical screen. She had been about to give the order to destroy the station completely. But then she saw something that made her freeze. On the screen, she could see the main hub of the human station, and there, under a fallen beam, was a human soldier covering a small figure with his own body. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. It was her daughter, little Kira, who had wandered away from the diplomatic group during the chaos of the battle, and a human, an enemy soldier, had just saved her life. "Commander?" asked her second officer. "Should we continue the attack?" Lyra stared at the screen. The human soldier wasn't moving anymore. He might be dead, but he had used his own body to protect a Zephyrian child, an enemy child. "No." Lyra said quietly, "Pull back. All ships, retreat immediately." "But, Commander, we have them beat. The station is defenseless." "I said retreat!" Lyra's voice was sharp and final. As the Zephyrian ships pulled away from Kepler Station, rescue teams rushed into the main hub. They found Jake unconscious but alive, still covering the alien child with his broken body. The little Zephyrian girl, Kira, refused to leave Jake's side. She sat next to him while the human medics worked to save his life, her small hand holding his much larger one. None of them knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. The war, the hatred, the fear between their two species. All of it would be different because one human soldier chose to protect an enemy's child with his own body. Jake Martinez had just done something that would make him famous across the galaxy. But right now, he was just a hurt man who had followed his heart instead of his orders. And somewhere in space, Commander Lyra Vex was trying to understand why a human would die to save her daughter. Jake woke up slowly. His body felt strange, like he was floating in warm water. The pain in his ribs was gone. In fact, he felt better than he had in months. He opened his eyes and saw a ceiling that glowed with soft blue light. This wasn't a human medical bay. The walls were smooth and curved, made of some kind of metal he didn't recognize. Strange symbols glowed along the edges of everything. Jake tried to sit up and found that he could move without pain. He looked down at his chest where the broken ribs should be. Under a thin medical gown, his skin looked normal. No bruises, no cuts. "You are awake," said a voice. Jake turned toward the sound. A tall figure stood in the doorway. It was a Zephyrian, but not like the soldiers he had fought. This one wore a long coat with gold markings. The alien was clearly female, with the same blue-gray skin and black eyes as all her people. But there was something different about her face. It looked tired and worried. "Where am I?" Jake asked. He was surprised that he could understand her. She must be using some kind of translator device. "You are aboard the Serenthal, flagship of the Zephyrian fleet," the alien said. "I am Commander Lyra Vex." Jake's hand moved toward where his weapon should be, but of course it wasn't there. He was a prisoner on an enemy ship. This Commander Lyra could kill him with a word. But she didn't look like she wanted to hurt him. She looked like she wanted to say something important but didn't know how. "Why aren't I dead?" Jake asked. "Because my daughter is alive," Lyra replied simply. Jake remembered then. The alien child under the falling beam, those big black eyes looking up at him. He had covered the kid with his own body, expecting to die. "The child? Is she okay?" Something changed in Lyra's face when he asked about her daughter. The hard look of a military commander softened just a little. Kira is fine. Thanks to you. Lyra stepped closer to Jake's medical bed. You saved her life. She was just a kid, Jake said. I couldn't let her get hurt. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. You are human. We are your enemies. You should have left her to die. Jake shook his head. No, I couldn't do that. She was scared and trapped. It didn't matter what species she was. It matters to my people, Lyra said. What you did, we have a word for it. Kinsworn. When someone risks their life to save another's child, they become family. It is our most sacred bond. Jake didn't understand. But I'm human. Your enemy. Yes. And that makes this very complicated. Lyra moved to a window that showed the stars outside. Jake could see other Zephyrian ships moving in formation around them. My officers want me to treat you like any other prisoner, Lyra continued. They say you should be questioned and then executed. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had expected this. But I cannot do that, Lyra said, turning back to him. You are kinsworn to my family now. By our oldest laws, you are under my protection. I don't understand any of this, Jake said. Neither do I, Lyra admitted. In 3 years of war, no human has ever shown mercy to a Zephyrian, and no Zephyrian has ever spared a human. The door to the medical room opened, and Jake heard the sound of small feet running. A young voice called out something in the Zephyrian language. The alien child from the station ran into the room. She looked much better now, clean and wearing a bright blue outfit. When she saw Jake, her face lit up with a huge smile. Kira, slow down, Lyra said gently. The child ran right to Jake's bed and started talking fast in her own language, her hands moving excitedly. What is she saying? Jake asked. Lyra's face showed the first real smile Jake had seen from her. She is telling you about the new room I gave her, and the toys, and the sweet cakes she had for breakfast. She has been waiting for you to wake up so she could talk to you. Kira reached out and touched Jake's hand with both of her small ones. She looked up at him and said something else. She says thank you for being her shield, Lyra translated. She calls you her Sky Warrior. Jake looked down at the alien child holding his hand. 3 days ago, he would have seen an enemy. Now he just saw a little kid who was happy he was okay. Can you tell her I'm glad she's safe? Jake asked. Lyra spoke to Kira in their language. The child's smile got even bigger, and she replied with excitement. She wants to know if you will stay and be her friend, Lyra said. She says humans must be very brave to use their bodies as shields. Jake felt something strange in his chest. Not pain, but something warm and tight. This little alien girl saw him as a hero, not an enemy. Commander, Jake said to Lyra, why were you at Kepler Station? Your ship's attacked, but... Lyra's face became serious again. We came to talk peace. There was supposed to be a meeting with human leaders, but someone started shooting before we could talk. Peace talks? Jake was confused. Nobody told us about any peace talks. Someone wanted them to fail, Lyra said darkly. Someone on your side or mine doesn't want this war to end. Before Jake could ask more questions, the door opened again. A Zephyrian officer came in and spoke quickly to Lyra in their language. Jake could tell from the tone that it wasn't good news. Lyra's face went hard. She replied sharply to the officer who bowed and left. What's wrong? Jake asked. The High Command wants to see you, Lyra said. They are... not happy with my decision to heal you and keep you safe. Will they hurt Kira if I don't cooperate? No, Lyra said firmly. Kira is safe. But this is going to be difficult. Jake stood up from the medical bed. He felt strong and ready for whatever came next. I can handle difficult. Lyra looked at him with something that might have been respect. You are either very brave or very foolish. Jake Martinez. How do you know my name? We recovered your identification from Kepler Station. The whole fleet knows the name of the human who saved a Zephyrian child. Kira tugged on Jake's medical gown and said something to her mother. She wants to come with us, Lyra explained. She says if you are in trouble, she should help you, like you helped her. Jake knelt down so he was at Kira's eye level. The little alien girl looked at him with complete trust. It was the same look human children gave to their parents when they felt safe. Tell her I'll be okay, Jake said to Lyra, and tell her she's very brave. As Lyra translated, Jake realized something had changed inside him. He no longer saw these aliens as monsters. They had families, children, feelings just like humans did. Maybe this war didn't have to go on forever. Maybe one little girl's life was worth more than all the hatred between their species. But first, Jake had to survive whatever the High Command had planned for him. The High Command chamber was huge and dark. Jake stood in the center while 12 Zephyrian leaders sat in a circle around him. Their black eyes stared down at him like he was some kind of dangerous animal. Commander Lyra stood beside Jake. She wore her full military uniform with all her medals and rank symbols. Beside her, little Kira held her mother's hand, looking scared but determined to stay close to Jake. Human soldier Jake Martinez, said the leader of the High Command. His voice was cold and formal. You are accused of being a spy and a threat to our people. Jake looked up at the alien leader. I'm not a spy. I'm just a soldier who protected a child. You are an enemy, another commander said. Your people have killed thousands of ours. Why should we trust you? Because he saved my daughter when he could have let her die, Lyra said firmly. That makes him kin-sworn by our oldest laws. The High Command leaders spoke to each other in their own language. Jake could tell they were arguing. Some sounded angry, others seemed uncertain. The kin-sworn bond is ancient, the lead commander said finally. But it has never been used for an enemy before. The law doesn't say the child has to be from our species, Lyra replied. Jake risked his life to save Kira. That makes him family. One of the older commanders leaned forward. Commander Vex, you are too close to this situation. Your feelings for your daughter are clouding your judgment. My judgment is clear, Lyra said. This human showed honor when he could have shown hatred. He chose to protect instead of destroy. Jake listened to them argue about his fate, but he was also watching little Kira. The alien girl kept looking between her mother and the High Command with worried eyes. She understood that something bad might happen to Jake. I want to say something, Jake announced loudly. The chamber went quiet. All the Zephyrian leaders stared at him. I know you think humans are your enemies, Jake said, and I used to think you were mine. But I learned something important on that station. Jake looked around at all the alien faces watching him. When I saw Kira trapped under that metal, I didn't see an enemy. I saw a scared child who needed help. That's all that mattered in that moment. Pretty words, said one of the commanders, but words are easy. Actions matter more. Then judge me by my actions, Jake said. I chose to save her life instead of letting her die. I used my own body as a shield. If that doesn't prove my intentions, nothing will. Kira suddenly let go of her mother's hand and ran to Jake. She wrapped her small arms around his leg and looked up at the high command. Then she started speaking in her own language, her voice high and clear. "What is she saying?" Jake asked Lyra quietly. Lyra's eyes were bright with pride and worry. "She's telling them that you are her sky warrior, her protector. She says if they hurt you, they are hurting her family." The high command looked uncomfortable. In Zephyrian culture, children were sacred. To go against a child's wishes, especially about family bonds, was almost unthinkable. But then the lead commander stood up. "This is too dangerous. We cannot set a precedent of accepting human prisoners as family members. It could weaken our position in the war." "What war?" Jake asked. "Commander Vex told me you came to Kepler Station for peace talks. Who sabotaged them?" The chamber went very quiet. Jake realized he had just asked something important. "How do you know about the peace talks?" demanded one of the commanders. "Because someone shot first before you could talk," Jake said. "Someone who didn't want peace. Was it humans? Was it your people? Or was it someone else entirely?" Lyra looked at the high command. "I told him the truth. We went there to negotiate an end to this war." "You should not have told an enemy our plans," said the lead commander angrily. "He's not our enemy anymore," Lyra said. "He's kinsworn. And if we're going to accuse me of breaking rules, then let's follow all the rules." She stepped forward, her voice becoming formal and official. "I invoke the right of challenge. By ancient law, when the High Command questions a kin-sworn bond, the sworn one may speak in defense of their family." The commanders looked shocked. Jake didn't understand what was happening, but he could tell it was important. "Commander Vex," the lead commander said slowly, "the right of challenge has not been used in over 200 years. Because no one has questioned a kin-sworn bond in 200 years, Lyra replied. But you are questioning mine. So I claim the right for Jake to defend our family honor." The old commander who had spoken before nodded slowly. "The law is clear. The human may speak." Jake looked at Lyra. "What do I need to do?" "Tell them the truth about what happened on the station," she said. "Tell them what you saw and felt when you chose to save Kira." Jake faced the high command. These aliens could order his death with a word, but somehow he wasn't afraid anymore. "When I saw your daughter under that falling metal, I didn't think about war or enemies or politics," Jake began. "I thought about how my little sister used to look when she was scared. I thought about every child I've ever seen who needed help." He looked down at Kira, who was still holding onto his leg. "Your people aren't monsters. Your parents and children and families just like humans. We're fighting because we're afraid of each other, not because we have to be enemies." Jake looked back at the commanders. "I don't know who sabotaged your peace talks, but I know that whoever it was, they want us to keep hating each other. They want us to keep killing each other's children." "And what would you have us do?" asked the lead commander. "Stop letting them win," Jake said simply. "Try talking again. Try trusting each other. Try putting our children's future ahead of our fear." The High Command talked among themselves again. This time their voices were quieter, more thoughtful. Finally, the lead commander spoke. "Jake Martinez, by saving the child of Commander Vex, you have earned a place in her family by our oldest laws. But you are still human, and we are still at war with your people." Jake's heart sank. they were going to reject the bond. However, the commander continued. The right of challenge has been invoked and your words have been heard. We will honor the kin-sworn bond. You will be given protected status aboard this ship. Jake felt relief wash over him. But then, the commander's next words made his blood run cold. But Commander Vex will face trial for her actions. Treating an enemy as family, sharing military secrets, and invoking ancient laws for political purposes are serious charges. No, Jake said quickly. She was protecting her daughter's honor. She followed your laws exactly. That will be decided at her trial, the lead commander said coldly. As the guards moved to escort Jake away, Kira ran to her mother and hugged her tightly. Lyra bent down and whispered something in the little girl's ear. Jake realized that by saving Kira's life, he might have doomed Lyra's. The woman who had shown him mercy and taught him that aliens could be honorable was now going to suffer because of him. He had to find a way to help her, just like she had helped him. The bond between them was deeper than either species understood. They were family now, and family protected each other. Jake paced in his small room aboard the Zephyrian ship. 3 days had passed since Lyra's trial began, and he hadn't been allowed to see her or Kira. He was going crazy with worry. The door opened, and a young Zephyrian officer came in. Jake had seen him before but didn't know his name. Human Jake, the officer said quietly. I am Lieutenant Kane. I served under Commander Vex for 2 years. Is she okay? What's happening at the trial? Kane looked around nervously, then closed the door behind him. The trial is not going well. They are saying she committed treason by helping you. Jake felt sick. This is my fault. No, Kane said, firmly. Commander Vex made her choice, but I came to warn you. The trial is just a distraction. What do you mean? Kane pulled out a small device and showed Jake a holographic display. It showed ship movements and communication logs. I have been monitoring fleet communications, Kane said. There are ships moving toward us, human ships and Zephyrian ships working together. Jake stared at the display. That's impossible. We're at war. Not all of them, Kane explained. Some humans and some Zephyrians don't want peace. They make money from this war. Weapons, supplies, territory. They profit from our hatred. The pieces started to fit together in Jake's mind. They sabotaged the peace talks at Kepler Station. Yes. And now they want to eliminate you and Commander Vex. Before your story spreads, if people learn that humans and Zephyrians can trust each other, the war might end. Where's Kira? Jake asked urgently. Safe for now, but not for long. Kane touched his device again. The display showed a detailed plan of attack. They will strike during the trial, when all the high command is together. They'll blame it on each other's military. It will make the war worse than ever. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. These people were willing to kill a child to keep their war going. What can we do? Commander Vex has loyal officers, Kane said. We can get you and her family out, but we need to move now. Alarms suddenly started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the hallway outside Jake's room. Too late, Kane said, checking his device. They're here! Explosions rocked the ship. Jake was thrown against the wall as the deck tilted under his feet. This way! Kane shouted. They ran through corridors full of smoke and panicking crew members. Jake could hear weapons fire echoing through the ship's halls. Where are we going? Jake asked as they climbed through a maintenance tunnel. To get Commander Vex and Kira. then to the escape pods. They emerged in a section near the detention cells. Through a window, Jake could see enemy ships attacking the Zephyrian fleet. But these weren't normal attacks. The ships were trying to capture, not destroy. They want prisoners, Kane explained. Evidence to blame on each other. They reached the detention area where Lyra was being held. Kane used his security codes to open her cell. Lyra looked up in surprise. She was wearing simple prison clothes, but her eyes were still sharp and alert. Kane? What's happening? Betrayal, the young officer said quickly. Human and Zephyrian forces working together to kill you and Jake. We need to go now. Where's Kira? Lyra demanded. Safe cabin on deck 7, Kane replied. But not for long. They fought their way through the ship as explosions continued around them. Jake found a weapon from a fallen security officer and used it to clear their path. You're a good shot for a human, Kane said as Jake took down 2 attackers. You're not bad for an alien, Jake replied. They reached deck 7, but the corridor was full of smoke and debris. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Kira, Lyra called out. A small voice answered from behind a damaged door. Mama! Kane worked to force the door open while Jake and Lyra watched for enemies. When it finally opened, Kira ran into her mother's arms. I was scared, the little girl said, in her own language. I know, baby, Lyra replied, holding her tight. But Jake is here now. He'll help keep us safe. Kira looked at Jake with those big black eyes. Sky Warrior came back. I promised I'd protect you, Jake said gently. I keep my promises. They made their way toward the escape pod bay, but Kane's device started beeping urgently. More ships incoming, he reported. Both human and Zephyrian. They're surrounding us. Any idea who we can trust? Jake asked. No one, Lyra said grimly. That's the point. They reached the escape pod bay just as enemy soldiers broke through the main doors. Jake pushed Lyra and Kira behind cover while Kane activated an escape pod. Go! Jake shouted, firing at the attackers. I'll hold them off! We're not leaving you, Lyra said. Yes, you are, Jake replied. Kira needs her mother. But before they could argue more, another group of soldiers appeared behind them. They were trapped. Surrender now, shouted the lead soldier. Jake couldn't tell if he was human or Zephyrian through the armor. Never, Lyra said, raising her own weapon. The soldiers advanced from both sides. Jake held Kira close while Lyra prepared to fight. This was it. After everything they'd been through, they were going to die here. But then the ship's speakers crackled to life. This is Admiral Chen of the human fleet, a voice announced. All unauthorized vessels stand down immediately. And this is High Commander Thane of the Zephyrian Defense Force, added another voice. Joint forces are taking control of this situation. The attacking soldiers looked confused. Their communications started chattering with conflicting orders. Kane, Lyra said urgently, did you contact both militaries? I sent everything I found to loyal officers on both sides, Kane admitted. The evidence of the conspiracy, I hoped someone would listen. Through the windows, Jake could see new ships arriving. These ones moved in formation together, human and Zephyrian vessels side by side. Attention all personnel, Admiral Chen's voice continued. We have evidence of war profiteers from both species working to sabotage peace efforts. Surrender your weapons and prepare to be questioned. The attacking soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. Without clear orders, they began lowering their weapons. Jake felt relief wash over him, but he knew this was just the beginning. The conspiracy went deep, and there would be others who wanted to keep the war going. What happens now? he asked. Lyra, now we tell everyone the truth, she said, holding Kira close, about what really started this war, and about what could end it. Kira looked up at both of them. Are we safe now? We're together, Jake said, putting his hand on the little girl's shoulder. And that's what matters. As joint forces took control of the ship, Jake realized something important. The bond between him, Lyra, and Kira had just survived its first real test. They were truly family now, and nothing could break that. The neutral space station Harmony was built just for this meeting. It floated between human and Zephyrian space, a symbol of hope that the two species could work together. Jake stood at a large window, watching ships from both fleets arrive. Human vessels and Zephyrian ships moved in careful formation, no longer pointing weapons at each other. Nervous? Lyra asked, joining him at the window. A little, Jake admitted. It's not every day you help end a war. It had been 2 weeks since the attack on the Serenthal. 2 weeks of investigations, arrests, and shocking discoveries. The conspiracy had been even bigger than they thought. Weapons companies, mining corporations, and corrupt officials from both species had been working together to keep the war going. The evidence Kane gathered saved a lot of lives, Lyra said. Jake nodded. The young Zephyrian officer had risked everything to expose the truth. Now he was being honored as a hero by both governments. Where's Kira? Jake asked. Learning to play chess with Admiral Chen, Lyra said with a smile. She's beating him. Jake laughed. In the past 2 weeks, little Kira had become the unofficial ambassador between the two species. Her innocent questions and observations had helped both sides see past their prejudices. Attention all delegates, came an announcement. The joint council meeting will begin in 10 minutes. Jake and Lyra made their way to the council chamber. It was a huge round room with representatives from both governments sitting together instead of on opposite sides. Admiral Chen stood up as they entered. He was an older human with gray hair and kind eyes. Despite being a military leader, he had been one of the strongest voices for peace. Jake, Lyra, he said warmly. Are you ready for this? As ready as we can be, Jake replied. High Commander Thane, the senior Zephyrian leader, approached them. He was tall even for his species, with silver markings on his blue-gray skin that showed his age and wisdom. The whole galaxy will be watching today, Thane said. Your story has already inspired peace movements on dozens of worlds. Jake still found it hard to believe. The story of a human soldier who protected an alien child had spread across both civilizations through news reports and personal messages. People were tired of war and death. They wanted to believe that peace was possible. Places, everyone, called the council moderator. Jake and Lyra took their seats at the center of the chamber. Jake wore his dress military uniform with all his medals. Lyra wore the formal robes of a Zephyrian commander, but with a new symbol added, the mark of the kin-sworn bond. Kira sat between them, wearing a special outfit that combined human and Zephyrian designs. She had insisted on being here, saying that this was her story too. Today we make history, Admiral Chen began, addressing the full council. Not through conquest or surrender, but through understanding. He activated a holographic display that showed the evidence they had gathered. Financial records, secret communications, and testimony from captured conspirators painted a clear picture. The war between our species was not inevitable, Chen continued. It was manufactured by those who profited from our suffering. High Commander Thane stood next. We discovered that the first attacks 3 years ago were carried out by mercenaries hired by weapons companies. Both sides thought the other had struck first. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Even knowing the truth, it was still shocking to hear it stated so clearly. But today is not about assigning blame, Thane said. Today is about choosing our future. The display changed to show a new document. It was a peace treaty, but unlike any that had been written before. The Alliance. Accord, Admiral Chen announced. Not just an end to war, but the beginning of partnership. Jake read through the key points on the display. Joint colonies, shared technology, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements. It was ambitious and hopeful. But first, Chen said, we want to hear from the two people who started this change. Jake felt his heart racing as he stood up. Every eye in the chamber was on him. When I covered Kira with my body on Kepler Station, he began, I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just saw a scared child who needed help. He looked around at all the faces, human and Zephyrian, watching him. That moment taught me something important. We're not that different. We both love our children. We both want them to be safe and happy. We both want to build something better for the future. Jake's voice grew stronger as he continued. The people who started this war knew that if we ever stopped fighting long enough to see each other as people instead of enemies, the war would end. They were right to be afraid of that. Applause started slowly, then grew throughout the chamber. Lyra stood next. Jake showed my people what honor looks like, she said. He proved that courage isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. She placed her hand on Kira's shoulder. My daughter will grow up in a galaxy where humans and Zephyrians work together, where children of both species learn from each other, where the kin-sworn bond extends beyond family to include entire civilizations. When Lyra finished speaking, something unexpected happened. Kira stood up on her chair and began talking in her clear young voice. She wants to say something, Lyra translated as Kira spoke in Zephyrian. She says that when she was trapped under the metal, she was very scared. But when Jake covered her with his body, she felt safe. She says that's what families do. They keep each other safe. Kira switched to speaking the human language she had been learning. Jake is my sky warrior, she said carefully. But he is also my family. And if he is my family, then all humans can be my family too. The simple wisdom of a child's words hung in the chamber. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Admiral Chen stood and formally presented the Alliance Accord to both delegations. All in favor of ratifying this treaty? Hands and appendages rose throughout the chamber. The vote was unanimous. Then by the authority granted to this joint council, High Commander Thane announced, the Alliance Accord is hereby ratified. The war between humans and Zephyrians is officially over. Cheers erupted throughout the chamber and across both fleets, watching from their ships. As the celebration continued around them, Jake felt Kira take his hand. On his other side, Lyra smiled at him with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Jake asked. Now we build the future, Lyra said. Together. Later that evening, Jake stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching the mixed fleet begin to disperse. Some ships would return to their home worlds with news of the peace. Others would begin the work of joint colonization and exploration. Jake had been offered a position as liaison between the species, helping to coordinate the cultural exchange programs. He had accepted immediately. Kira ran up to him, followed by Lyra. "Jake!" the little girl said excitedly. Mama says we're going to visit Earth. Will you show me your home? Of course, Jake said, picking her up. And then we'll visit Thylos Prime, so I can see yours. Lyra joined them at the window. The Zephyrian High Command wants to grant you full citizenship, she said. It's unprecedented for a human, but the kinsworn bond gives you the right. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means you're officially my family, Lyra said simply, and Kira's chosen father figure, if you want to be. Jake looked at the little alien girl in his arms, then at her mother who had shown him that enemies could become family. I can't think of anything I'd want more, he said. Kira hugged him tightly. My Sky Warrior Papa, she said happily. As Jake held his new daughter and stood beside her mother, he thought about that moment on Kepler Station when everything changed. He had thrown himself over a trapped child without thinking, just following his instincts to protect someone smaller and weaker. That single act of protection had ended a war and brought two species together. It had given him a family he never expected and a purpose greater than any mission he had ever been given. Jake Martinez had always been a good soldier, but protecting Kira had made him something more important. A bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope, and a father to a little girl who saw past all differences to the heart of what really mattered. The war was over. The future was beginning, and it was going to be beautiful.